Today is Thursday. And this is a throwback.
Today is Thursday, and this is a throwback is an obnoxiously long hashtag in a nostalgic-rich talk show presented by the Peridot. Today in history. On November 6, 1860, Americans elected Abraham Lincoln as the President of the United States. His victory led to the secession of the Southern states and the long and bloody Civil War that lasted until 1865 and ended slavery in the U.S. On November 6, 1984, U.S. President Ronald Reagan won re-election in a landslide victory over Democratic candidate Walter F. Mondale. Today's Throwback VHS is dedicated to the #1 movie in America on November 6, 1993, The Nightmare Before Christmas, an American stop-motion gothic fantasy film directed by Henry Selick in his feature directorial debut, and produced and based on a story and characters conceived by Tim Burton. It tells the story of Jack Skellington, the king of Halloween Town, who stumbles upon Christmas Town and schemes to take over the holiday. Danny Elfman wrote the songs and score and provided the singing voice of Jack. The cost of admission to the cinema in 1993 was $4.14. Back in the days when I was young, I'm not a kid anymore, but some days I sit and wish I was a kid again. Today's throwback is dedicated to food stamps. Here is a short history of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, better known as SNAP. In 1939, the idea for the first food stamp program is credited to various people, most notably Secretary of Agriculture Henry Wallace and the program's first administrator Milo Perkins. The program operated by permitting people on relief to buy orange stamps equal to their normal food expenditures. For every $1 worth of orange stamps purchased, 50 cents worth of blue stamps were received. Orange stamps could be used to buy any food. Blue stamps could only be used to buy food determined by the department to be surplus. The first recipient was Mabel McFiggin of Rochester, New York on May 16, 1939. Over the course of nearly 4 years, the first food stamp program reached approximately 20 million people at one time, or another in nearly half of the counties in the United States. Peak participation was 4 million at a total cost of $262 million. The program ended in the spring of 1943, since the conditions that brought the program into being, unmarketable food surpluses and widespread unemployment, no longer existed. We got a picture of a gorge with farm surpluses on one cliff and undernourished city folks with outstretched hands on the other. We set out to find a practical way to build a bridge across that chasm, Milo Perkins stated. The 18 years between the end of the first food stamp program and the inception of the next were filled with studies, reports, and legislative proposals. Congresswoman Leonora K. Sullivan strove unceasingly to pass food stamp program legislation. On September 21, 1959, PL 86-341 authorized the Secretary of Agriculture to operate a food stamp system through January 31, 1962. The Eisenhower administration never used the authority. However, in fulfillment of a campaign promise made in West Virginia, President Kennedy's first executive order called for expanded food distribution.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Sir, would you please tell us how it was possible for you to do by executive order what Mr. Benson always told us was impossible for him to do without more legislation? I refer to the order expanding the distribution of food to the unemployed and giving them more variety in the diet.
Well, I would not attempt to comment on Mr. Benson. I don't think there's any question of our rights to issue the executive order under the authority given to us by the Constitution and by legislative action. I think we're within our rights. It is a judgment as to what is the best use to make of the funds that are available. The funds are quite limited. The diet which is being provided for the people who are unemployed is still inadequate. But nevertheless, we have used the funds that are available to the maximum. And I don't think there's any question that we were within our rights.
And on February 2nd, 1961, he announced the initiation of food stamp pilot programs. The pilot programs would remain the requirement that the food stamps be purchased, but eliminated the concept of special stamps for surplus foods. By January 1964, the pilot program had expanded from 8 areas to 43, 40 counties, Detroit, St. Louis, and Pittsburgh, in 22 states with 380,000 participants. On January 31st, 1964, President Johnson requested Congress to pass legislation making the food stamp program permanent. Secretary Orville Freeman had submitted proposed legislation to establish a permanent food stamp program on April 17, 1963. The bill that was eventually passed by Congress was introduced by Congresswoman Sullivan. In April 1965, participation topped 500,000. Actual participation was 561,261 people. Participation topped 1 million in March 1966, 2 million in October 1967, 3 million in February 1969, 4 million in February 1970, 5 million 1 month later in March 1970, 6 million 2 months later in May 1970, 10 million in February 1971, and 15 million in October 1974. Rapid increases in participation during this period were primarily due to geographic expansion. The Food Stamp Act Amendment of 1970 passed on January 11, 1971, and established uniform national standards, eligibility, and work registration requirements. Required that allotments be equivalent to the cost of a nutritionally adequate diet, limited household purchase requirements to 30% of their income, instituted an outreach requirement, authorized the department to pay 62.5% of specific administrative costs incurred by states, expanded the food stamp program to Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands of the United States, and provided $1.75 billion appropriations for fiscal year 1971. The program was not fully implemented in Puerto Rico until November 1st, 1974. In 1976, participation hit a record high of 18.5 million people. By 1981, participation hit a new record of 22.4 million people. Electronic Benefit Transfer, or EBT, is an electronic system that allows a recipient to authorize transfer of their government benefits from a federal account to a retailer account to pay for products received. Benefits are delivered to clients on a debit card. The first electronic benefits transfer, or EBT, pilot began in Reading, Pennsylvania in 1984. EBT helped cut back on food stamp fraud by creating an electronic record of each food stamp transaction, making it easier to identify violations. The rate of trafficking, primarily the exchange of food stamps for cash, went from nearly 4% in the 1990s down to around 1% after EBT was fully implemented. In 2008, participation in SNAP hit a new high of 28.2 million people, following a significant decline in participation through the late 1990s. Participation continued to hit new record highs every year until 2013. And we all remember what happened in 2008, don't we? The 2008 Farm Bill, the Food Conservation and Energy Act of 2008, was enacted on May 22, 2008, through an override of the president's veto. The new law increased the commitment to federal food assistance programs by more than $10 billion over the next 10 years. In efforts to fight stigma, the law changed the name of the federal program to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, as of October 1, 2008, and changed the name of the Food Stamp Act of 1977 to the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 was passed in response to the Great Recession, which began in December of 2007, to stimulate the economy and facilitate economic recovery. Among the provisions in ARRA was the authority to increase SNAP benefit levels. Since SNAP households spend nearly 97% of their benefits within the first month, The increased benefits were viewed as providing an immediate economic stimulus to the economy. In 2013, participation hit a new record high of 47.6 million people. In the years since this record high, participation has steadily decreased to 42.1 million people in 2017. You know what time it is? Yeah, it's time for the number one song of the day. It's the number one song of the day. The number one song on the Billboard Hot 100 on November 6, 2000 was With Arms Wide Open by Creed. With arms wide open under the sunlight. That's how you gotta sing Creed. With arms wide open. That used to be my jam. Well, that concludes today's show. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Peridot Network on YouTube. Listen to the Peridot's playlist on Spotify, and follow the Peridot.net on Instagram, TikTok, and the website formerly known as Twitter.
Today is Thursday. And this is a throwback.
With arms wide open, go volunteer at your local food bank with arms wide open.